Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Anurekha Charivag, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. I am coordinating the paper on Sociology of India. Today we are going to discuss the module State, Society and Development in India, Tribe and Issues of Survival. This module has been written by Dr. Sugata Mohanty, independent researcher, Mumbai. In this module, we are going to discuss the issue of survival among the tribes, both in terms of pre-independence and post-independence state policies. And specifically, we are going to focus on the tribes in the state of Odisha to understand the challenges of survival. The question is, why Odisha? It is important to understand that Odisha has always remained a marginalized region, and therefore, by bringing into a case study of Odisha, it would be interesting to see how in Odisha the tribals are facing the issues of their survival. Objective: to understand the role of the state in uplifting the marginal section of the society called tribe, analyzing the situation of tribe by linking their marginality with greater world order. 3. To examine the tribal survival issues in its political, economic and historical context. And finally, to understand the tribal questions at a macro level against the backdrop against the backdrop of marginalization. Introduction. In a society as diverse and complex as India, marginalization is a multi-layered phenomenon and a critical area of concern for the regional, national and international community. While development is always broadly conceived in terms of mass participation in the growth process, marginalization deprives certain groups of citizens from participating in the development process effectively. It is in this background that one should study Indian society and its heterogeneity, which provides much more complexity with reference to the problem of survival of the marginalized citizens of the country. This situation is particularly apt in the case of tribal people of the country. Why is this so? The tribes constitute a very important segment of Indian society and are officially called the scheduled tribes. Article 342. There are 700 tribes scheduled by the Government of India as per 2011 census. These tribes are socio-economically and educationally backward classes among the citizens of this country. According to Behrua, they belong to the weaker section of the population and are therefore entitled to protection against social injustice and every form of exploitation under Article 46 of the Indian Constitution. In the post-independence era, the new government adopted the ideology based on socialist and democratic values, and the perception towards the role of the state with regard to the tribe has changed. Besides the rights and privileges which were at par with other citizens, tribes have been provided with protective and corrective measures under various constitutional provisions, including the 5th and the 6th schedules. Therefore, in popular notion, the relationship between the state and the tribes is being treated as cooperative, and the policies of the state are regarded as welfaristic in nature. However, after many decades of planned development and economic measures, it is reported by different studies from different parts of the country that the incidence of poverty, indebtedness, lack of education, erosion of tribal rights over the natural resources, displacement and land alienation is rampant among the tribes of India. This grim situation of the tribes compels us to think that probably in reality the development policies have benefited large-scale private sector industries and did not involve any radical restructuring of the relations of production into a more democratic or egalitarian system committed to improving the tribal position. In such a context, the relationship between the state and the tribes needs to be examined in more detail at the spatial level. In the present module, we examine the role of the state in addressing the marginalized experiences of the tribes, while taking into context the issues of survival of the tribes located in one of the underdeveloped regions of the country, the state of Odisha. The aim of the module is to provide an understanding of the interlinkages between marginalization, regional underdevelopment and policies of the state. We will be discussing the changing scenarios in the tribal life of India, taking into consideration the tribal issues, and will link the micro level experiences of underdevelopment and marginalization with macro level structures and policies. For analysis purpose, here we have chosen the two major sources of tribal livelihood, land and forest. Along with the introduction to the subject and conclusion, there are three sections in this module. The first section will deal with the issues of survival among tribes of India from pre-independence era to post-independence period. To understand the situation at the macro level, in the second section an effort has been taken to discuss the tribes of Odisha and the diminishing control over natural resources. Interestingly, in the year 2013, A panel headed by Raghuram Rajan, the present RBI governor, stated that the state is the most backward state in India and hence needs special assistance from the central government. The third section focuses on the new economic policies and the marginalization of the tribes of Orissa. Distribution of tribes. The tribal communities of India are scattered in various ecological and geoclimatic conditions ranging from plains, forests, hills and sometimes inaccessible areas. These tribal people are different stages of socio-economic, political and educational development. As per 2011 census, the total tribal population of a country is 10.43 crores, constituting 8.6% of the total population. Out of them, 89.97% live in rural areas and 10.03% in the urban areas. These tribes inhabit broadly two major geographical areas such as central India and northeastern states. It is observed that more than half of the STs are concentrated in central India, that is Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Gujarat, Rajasthan. Section 1. Issues of survival among the tribes of India. Pre-independence period. As Ramdas has pointed out, the origin of survival issues among the tribes can be traced back to the periods of deprivation of tribal people from the resources. Historical documents reveal that centuries ago, due to the arrival of advanced groups in India, tribal people started losing their territory. The new groups, being superior in their technology and outlook, forced the tribes to the nearest jungles and started occupying the fertile land. It is found that in earlier days, the tribes used to depend on resources available in their immediate surroundings for sustenance. The community used to survive on food collected through gathering and hunting in the nearby areas. With the passing of time, the tribes acquired new skills for undertaking agricultural activities. Tribes used to clear the forest and make it cultivable, and in the process establish control over it. The tribal societies also had various religious ways to conserve the natural surrounding. They focused on the conservation of forests for its sustainable use. However, with the growth of population, many non-tribes from the nearby areas came to settle in the tribal areas and slowly started acquiring the forest land. The condition further aggravated during the colonial rule, argues Verma. Gadgil stated that the system of sustainable use of natural resources by the local people took a new turn with the advent of British rule in the country. The colonial rulers had much advanced knowledge of science which was beyond the simple trial and error method of learning of the primitive group. In this period, cultivated as well as uncultivated lands were utilized for the production of a wide variety of resources to be exported out of the local area. Under the colonial economic system, the survival goods became commodities and the demand for which could be increased without any limit to it. The colonial government neither recognized the local concept of community control nor facilitated the process of conservation practices such as sacred groves in tribal India. In order to have a constant outflow of resources from the local areas to meet the colonial needs, the government introduced various laws. These laws are called land laws and forest laws. Hammendorf explained that in order to have effective control over the tribal areas, the colonial government started improving the communication system. The government also established a system of land record and introduced land tenure and a system of revenue collection in these areas. After the insertion of land records, agricultural land became an individual transferable property. With the development of communication system, the price of agricultural products and land value began to rise. During this period, under the protection of British administration, traders, moneylenders and other settlers entered into the tribal area. These people began to settle down in tribal areas and started controlling the economy by occupying vast stretches of tribal land. The situation further aggravated with the implementation of different forest practices. Before 1865, forest dwellers were completely free to use the forest. On 3rd August 1865, the British rulers, on the basis of the report of the then Superintendent of Forest in Burma, issued a memorandum providing guidelines restricting the rights of forest dwellers to conserve these forests, argues Joshi. In the name of scientific forestry, different acts were enacted to restrict people's right over the forest. Valuable trees were destroyed to meet the demand of the defense industry, plywood factories, underground structures in coal mines, railway sleepers, etc. Saravanan in his study stated that the focus of the colonial forest policy was to extract the forest resources for commercial purposes, and that resulted in a negative impact on both the environment and the tribal population in the area. Further, he argues that the colonial policies had always claimed to be people-centric, whereas it actually aimed at commercializing rather than conserving forest resources. In reality, forest policy led to the disintegration of the traditional tribal system and the forest-oriented economy. Unfortunately, these policies of yesteryears continue to exist even till today. Post-independence period. In this period, many plans and policies were formulated in the name of development of the weaker section of the society. The National Forest Policy of the Government of India 1952 is one of them. The content of it shows that in reality it is an extension of the colonial policy. Post-independence policy prescribed that the claims of the communities near forests should not override the national interest. According to it, in no event can the forest dweller ever use the forest wealth at the cost of the wider national interest, and that conversion of forest land for agriculture should be permitted only in very exceptional and essential cases. This resulted in pauperization and systematic dispossession of tribal people from their traditional customary rights. Elwin has aptly described the state of tribal people, where he says there was a time when the tribes were viewing themselves as lord of the forest. The situation was altered completely through a deliberate process where they became subject and placed under forest department. He felt tribal villages are no longer an essential part of the forest but were there mainly on sufferance. The traditional rights of the tribes were also no longer recognized as rights. On the other hand, in 1894 they became rights and privileges, and in 1952 they became rights and concessions. Now they are regarded only as concession. Bhanumati has pointed out that at least till the 90s, India followed a socialist model of development where the role of the state was clearly welfare and social justice was its fundamental principle. However, with the introduction of new economic policy in 1991, there was a complete reversal in welfare and socialist mode of development. The resources available in the scheduled areas were viewed as having vast potential for exploitation, and the new economic policy showed a clear inclination of the state's approval of providing accessibility of these regions to global and private owners. With globalization, it is the market and not the community which became the actual player. In the name of development, many mega development projects such as multi-purpose river dams, power plants, mineral-based industries like iron and steel plants, aluminium plants were set up in the tribal areas. This resulted in massive exploitation of mineral resources and acquisition of land in the tribal heartland. As it is discussed by Dixit, by the year 2000, India had invested more than 300 billion on dams and hydropower projects. The World Bank has directly funded as many as 87 large-scale dam projects in India, as against 58 for the whole of the African continent and 59 for Latin America. It is also noticed that between 1981 and 1990, the World Bank had provided $7 billion for these projects in India, which is 1/5 of its total funding for 85 countries all over the world. Therefore, all the major dam projects in India became intrinsically connected to world capitalism. Nearly 60% of these large dams are located in both central and western India, where more than 75% of the tribal population live. These activities in the name of development have alienated many tribal people from their ancestral properties. In this context, the United Nations Environment Program report should be viewed. The report states that Karjan and Sukhi Reservoir in Gujarat have displaced only tribes. Around 98% of the displaced people in Balimela Hydro Project and 96% of Upper Kola Project in Orissa are from tribal community. Many a times now they are displaced from the livelihood. They lack legal rights over it, since land laws recognize only individual ownership rights and maintain silence over common property resources. Ramdas points out that the issue has aggravated further in the recent times due to the growing importance of commoditization of products and services in the changing economy. The early statistics related to land holding pattern is not available, and therefore it is difficult to present the exact magnitude of inequalities in the case of land. This gap in the information is also accepted by National Commission on Backward Areas. The post-independence census data of 1961 shows that 29% of the ST households had land holdings of less than 2.4 acres as compared to 34.5% of general caste population. The data also shows a gradual deterioration of land ownership among the STs. The annual report of the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India 2007-8 states that 5.06 lakh cases of tribal land alienation have been registered. It covers a total of 9.02 lakh acres of land, of which 2.25 lakh cases has been disposed of in the favor of tribal people, covering a total area of 5 lakh acres, and 1.99 lakh cases covering areas of 4.11 lakh acres have been rejected by the courts on various grounds. Various reports state that not a single case out of 29,596 cases have been ruled in favor of the tribal people of Madhya Pradesh. Similarly, in Odisha, 43,213 out of 1,04,644 cases, and in Tripura, 20,043 out of 29,112 cases were decided against the tribal people and rejected by the authority. As discussed above, the resource exhausting development model practiced by the modern civilized men is gradually snatching away scarce resources from the tribal ecosystem in the name of increasing per capita income and modern economic development. This development model causes deprivation and resource alienation among the ecosystem people and pushes them into the state of poverty. In fact, it is these minority sections of Aboriginal population who bear the brunt of modern resource exhausting development and virtually face a threat to their existence. Section 2. A macro level analysis, the state of Odisha. To understand the issues of survival at a macro level, the state of Odisha is taken into account. The question arises, why Odisha? Odisha is an example of rich resources and poor people state. The state has the highest production of aluminium in India, and it also contains 1/5 of India's coal, 1/4 of India's iron and most of the chromite deposits. While on one hand the state is most favorite destination for foreign direct investment, on the other hand it is one of the most backward states of our country. As per the Planning Commission's report 2004-5, Odisha has 39.9% of BPL population. The problem of survival among tribes is severe in Odisha as in the other states in India. Scheduled tribes, which constitutes more than 22% of Odisha's population, are the most marginalized and poor social group in the state, with over 72% living under poverty line. Kumar and Chaudhary's study shows that land and land-based resources are central to the livelihoods of tribal people. They have poor access to land and forest. Most tribal communities in Odisha have strong cultural and social relationship with its environment, with many practicing communal ownership of land. The study emphasized the poor access of tribal land is not only the outcome of land alienation to non-tribes, but is also the result of land and forest policies followed by the state. Hence, it is essential that a historical analysis of the survival options among the tribes in Odisha and the socio-economic, political and ecological dynamics need to be studied in more detail, as the state has more than 1/5 of the population as tribes. More so, tribal poverty is very acute in the state. Of late, it has further aggravated due to loss of the sustainable means of subsistence and backwardness, causing isolation from the mainstream development paradigm of post-independent India. Issues of survival among the tribes of Odisha. Pre-independence period. The situation of tribes in the pre-colonial period was more or less same in all parts of the country. With the advent of colonial rule, the situation started changing. It is observed that till the first half of the 19th century, tribal regions of Odisha were mostly inaccessible. Southern districts like Kalahandi, Ganjam, Koraput, Phulbani received due importance with regard to communication only after the annexation of these areas by the British. Most of the officers then posted in these areas advocated for the development of communication system only to fulfill their own interest. A.J.M. Mills, the then Commissioner of Tributary Mahals of Odisha, emphasized on the development of road, as he considered the opening of roads through the uncivilized and the jungle countries would help in putting down rebellions which erupted among the tribes of those areas. Officers also gave importance to the opening of the roads through the regions of the Ghats, which are like hill tracks, for the promotion of interactions between the tribal and surrounding non-tribal population as the first steps towards promotion of modern civilization among the natives. Due to these recommendations, the British government opened up roads in the tribal areas of Odisha that made the non-tribe entry easy, argues Patnaik. As mentioned in the Citizens Report 1994, another factor which also contributed to the process is the Great Bengal-Odisha famine of 1866-67, which took away almost 1/4 of the lives of the coastal districts of Odisha. It is because of the famine that non-tribal inhabitants of the coastal areas came up to the hills in search of livelihood. Inter-regional movements of non-tribes also increased due to the population growth and expansion of economic activity. Slowly but steadily in the tribal areas, the resource transfer from the natives to the immigrants started occurring, and in due course of time, the natives were pushed into a resource crunch situation and became ready to provide easy labor to the newly established owners. The British government's major intention was to collect revenue and exploit natural resources from each and every part of the state for their own interest. To collect revenue, the government started introducing new land tenure system and land laws. Written documents in foreign languages were introduced in a society where legitimacy was given to the word of mouth. The government appointed many officials to take care of the administration and collection of taxes in the tribal areas. The officials used to receive acres of forest land in lieu of their service, and these rent-free lands actually belonged to the tribal, argues Patnaik and Ball. Post-independence period. With independence, new hope arose among the people of the country, and the people of Odisha were not an exception to it. There was lot of optimism and belief among all sections of the society. People started thinking that the plans and programs of the new government would be successful in mass poverty and destitution caused due to years of colonial exploitation. Hence, when the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, called the people to sacrifice the home and hearth for development of the nation, no one protested against the idea. Owing to this, the foundation stone of Hirakud Dam in Odisha, the first major multi-purpose dam, was laid, and acres of land were acquired under Land Acquisition Act of 1894, displacing many tribal families from the home and her. The affected people accepted the compensation fixed by the government. Very often the compensation was paid as per the social status and articulation level of the displaced families. It is observed from Babu's study on the Hirakud Dam that ousted people have been paid a meager compensation for the loss of their agricultural land and houses. The community life has been ruptured, and because of the poor planning of the government, local tribals suffer general hardship and economic decline. It was also found that even after more than 50 years of establishment of the dam, the resettlement and rehabilitation problems of the displaced persons continue till today in some form or another. Fernandez and Raj also mentioned that 58% of the lands acquired for National Aluminium Company (NALCO) of Damanjodi, which is a tribal dominated area of Koraput district, Odisha, were common property resources. Therefore, no compensation was paid to the displaced persons as they did not have an individual patta, that is record of right in their own name. An average of rupees 2,700 per acre was paid for the little private land that they owned. On the other hand, 18% of the land acquired in the same year for NALCO's another unit in high caste dominated areas of Anugul district, where the patta landowners were paid an average of 25,000 per acre. Backed by post-independence era new land reform process, which justifies the fact that the state alone has a right to decide and define the public purpose, can also displace a person from his or her private property anytime. The Land Acquisition Act of 1894 was again amended in 1984 without changing the content of it. The act says it is not necessary that land when taken should be made available to the public at large, but it is enough if it is in the general interest of the community as opposed to individual interest. Land reform process could also not succeed in transferring the land from the non-cultivators to cultivators. So the poverty and scarcity conditions forced the poor to sell off the land in order to fulfill their daily requirements. Even when canal irrigation was introduced, many marginal and small farmers could not pay the land and water tax or invest on the agricultural development, so many were forced to sell away their lands. In case of land holdings of the tribes, it is found that tribal dominated districts witnessed a limited amount of private land holdings by the tribe. The data provided in the United Nations Development Program Report 2008 and the District Statistical Handbook of 2005 show that more than 75% of the land is recorded as government property. Similarly, out of 10 tribal districts, 4 Kalahandi, Keonjhar, Koraput and Raigada of them have less than 40% of forest land. The other 2 districts such as Mayurbhanj and Navarangpur have less than 50% forest cover. Similarly, except Kandhamal, the rest of the districts have 60% of area covered with forest land. Daud shows some amount of forest coverage in tribal areas. The maximum percentage of forest land are considered either as reserve or protected forest. In any case, tribal people are restricted by law to enjoy the traditional forest rights, since entry into the forest is considered as trespassing. The tribal people are asked to pay fines by the forest officials for such act. The restrictions of the government in assessing resources has a huge bearing on the sustainability of the tribal living pattern. In the case of unrecorded lands, the tribes are always treated as trespassers. It is found that the plane table method for mapping of land is used in Odisha. According to this method, land beyond 10 degrees slope cannot be measured because only horizontal distance can be mapped and measured. Therefore, all land above 10 degrees were categorized as state-owned uncultivable wasteland, although much of this land was cultivated by tribal people. However, in March 2000, the government of Odisha decided to provide ownership rights to all people in the scheduled areas cultivating land up to 30 degrees slope and to carry out a special survey on it. Saxena argues this is yet to be implemented in all the scheduled areas of the state. Tribes have always taken the pain to justify and prove the ownership of their land. This process has started in the colonial period and continuing even till today. The post-independence forest acts have always tried to minimize tribal access to the forest areas. Through the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, vast areas were recorded as reserve protected without settling the local rights. Samal mentions that many development projects were approved under Section 2 of the Forest Conservation Act 1980. It is found from that period 1982 to 2010, there are total of 376 projects covering an area of 36,985.64 hectares that have been diverted for non-forest use. It is observed that from 1982 to 1991, a total of 87 projects covering an area of 9,800 hectares of forest land, and in 1992 to 2001, a total of 130 projects covering an area of 15,543 acres of land have been diverted for different non-forest uses. This clearly projects that large patches of forest land have been simply diverted towards different developmental projects in the liberalization period. The number of projects in occupied area are increasing day by day as the period from 2002 to 2010 2010 has also witnessed around 159 projects diverting 11,642.08 acres of forest land for non-forest use. Section 3. New economic policy and its impact on the tribes of Odisha. The 1990s witnessed the introduction of the new economic policy, and to make the best use of it, the state of Odisha announced its new power, infrastructure and mining policies to invite foreign and domestic private investments. Studies show that during 1995-96, Odisha received the largest amount of private investment in India, both foreign and domestic. On top of it, the state government provided huge subsidies to investors, and the state's cheap labor force further made it investor friendly. Odisha attracted 97,300 crores of investment during 1992-97, and the majority of it went to heavy mineral-based industries consisting of steel, alumina and power projects, argue Mohanty and Mohanty. As Samal has rightly put, Odisha has turned into a resource-cursed state as it has lower economic growth than the state having lesser resources. He further pointed out that the massive investment as a part of the liberalization process in the mineral processing industries in the state has led to large-scale displacement of the people, and most of them belong to weaker sections, particularly the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. The impact of globalization is seen in almost every aspect of the so-called development. It has had a tremendous impact on the agriculture and allied sectors too. In Odisha, we see two important forms of commercialization of agriculture. In one case, the land is taken away from the farmers by giving a premium for a particular period, and the other method is by asking the farmers to undertake agricultural activity and taking instructions. How commercialization of agriculture fetches more money, it progressively diminishes the productivity of land. For example, in the case of cotton production, once the land is free from cultivation, it becomes barren because of the heavy use of chemical. The land also becomes completely unsuitable even for cattle grazing. When the productivity of the land decreases, the land use value decreases simultaneously. Many of the tribal lands are used for such commercial use. On the other hand, production of commercial crops like cashew, lemongrass and spices have become a hindrance to the production of cereals and pulses, food grains, which may lead to the shortage of food materials or high cost of it in the tribal areas. UNDP report 2008 states that due to commercial value of agricultural products, the tribes are lured to produce them more in order to get immediate cash. Majority of the tribes were traditional landowners. It is because of the change in the political economy of the state that the owners of the land are gradually becoming agricultural laborers. This is an alarming trend which is taking place among the tribes of Orissa. When we look at the data from the census year 1961 to 2001, it is found that there is a marked decline in the percentage of ST, that is scheduled caste cultivators, from 62.8% in 1961 to 33.3% in 2001, almost 50%. There has also been an increase in the agricultural laborers from 22.2% in 1961 to 46.9% in 2001. Conclusion. Though we claim many achievements in the field of science and technology, the tribes in India in general and Odisha in particular continue to struggle for their basic existence and survival. Loss of control over the resources has deprived them of their main source of sustenance. It is said land is their life and forest is their home. However, with the imposition of forest laws and commercialization of forests, resource things are planned to be modified to meet the growing competition need of modern consumerist man. Therefore, it has become difficult for them to depend completely on the forest and forest products for their sustenance. Hence, focus shifts to agriculture and other allied sectors. In a social setting and in the case of a social problem, no magic wand or instant remedies really work. The above descriptions about the dynamics of the issue of survival with that of the different stakeholders have given rise to a general consensus that poverty is the root cause of the general current situation of the tribes. The term development denotes a holistic improvement of any person or place. It is the present development model which seems to be more modern consumer centric than addressing the basic problems of the downtrodden. In order to have a better development scenario in the tribal area, there is a need to have a more inclusive and consensual order of development. This cohesive way of addressing the situation would minimize the gap between the have and the have-nots in the modern tribal society. The modern means of development should also be regulated properly so that it can bestow the benefits of development on the poor majority. Focus of the model should be on better quality of life and security of living of the weaker sections such as tribes in a sustainable manner. In the context of the survival issues, we could see that how the policy of the state both in pre-independence and post-independence era has been to progressively deny the tribals the right to forest, especially in terms of the livelihood rights. In such situation, we need to understand what is the meaning of development. If the meaning of development policy followed by the state marginalizes the large sections of the tribal populations of India and puts their livelihood at risk, it is very important to rethink our development policy. Thank you.